Hello, my name's Roy, and I'm 48 years old. I'm an alcoholic, and alcohol has caused a lot of problems in my life. Matter of fact, the biggest problem was, after losing my family's trust and hope, it sent me to prison. And I was institutionalized for 8.5 years. I got out and I did 4 years on parole, and my mom let me parole back home, and I did good for a little while, but I couldn't stay sober, and so I finally had to just move out, and then I wound up and I was homeless, and wound up and tried to kill myself at one time, and wound up in rehab. Got out of rehab and tried some different things, and they wasn't working.
I went to treatment in 2012, and I had nowhere to go when I got out, and it was in Little Rock, Arkansas. And they gave me a list, and I did not want to go back to Little Rock. And the only place I found outside of Little Rock was this place called Happy Destiny Homes with a phone number underneath it.
Happy Destiny Homes, it's the last word in the big book written about alcoholics and Alcoholics Anonymous, the 164-page book, which was the original for the first 100 people who got sober in Alcoholics Anonymous. We say, and surely you will meet some of us as you trudge the road of happy destiny. And that is why we call it Happy Destiny Homes. My name is Ben Wright. I come from Oklahoma originally. I spent many, many years traveling around the world. I wanted to become a teacher. So I have the title of doctor, and I've also been a professor. I've been chair of departments. I've been poet in residence. I've had credentialing in order to call myself professor or doctor. But I tell people, just call me Ben. The men here in the house, some of them call me Mr. Ben, some Dr. Ben, most of them just plain Ben.
My name is Donnie Scott. I am a recovering alcoholic addict, and I got sober back in 2003. I became an alcohol and drug counselor in 2005. I met Ben Wright somewhere around 2010. And we began a journey to help other folks because there was plenty of need for people who needed housing that were also recovering drug addicts and alcoholics.
The people who are in prison, when they get out, many of them don't know where to go. They have no education. They need some guidance. And we provide Happy Destiny Homes.
I got out of jail, I got out of treatment, had nowhere to go. Called a gentleman that I didn't know, and he picked me up, brought me here. My life has been fulfilling and growing ever since.
Got to meet the men over this house, Donnie and Mr. Ben, and they let me move in, and then I went to work in the steps of the Alcoholics Anonymous program.
I'm originally from Arizona, moved out here, weird circumstances like a lot of people. Just ended up here in Hot Springs, and I've been clean for about 2 years. Well, 2 years and 6 days now, and I was needing a place to live, and someone told me, oh yeah, there's this house over there, Kim free, and I was like, yay, because I don't want the temptation, I'm sick and tired of, my neighbors and everything trying to pass me joints and beers. And
This is one of the first houses that we used. It was for a married couple, and the one just behind it, that is almost its twin, also became a halfway house. Basically a 3-bedroom home. We have 5 men, 1 in one room and then 2 each in the other, 5 altogether. We never want to get more than 5 people because we feel they'd be crawling all over each other. They have 1 bathroom. But these men have a routine of cleaning the place, of vacuuming. They have a washer and a dryer here. And the house is perfectly placed in the center of this town. The number 1 bus right up the road there, about 100 yards. And then just down the road is the Oaklawn racetrack, and to the right is the Waffle House. But they can get to their AA and NA meetings very easily here. There's the SOS, Last House on the Block, Gemini, and then there's the Sellers Street meetings, all within walking distance. Many of the men do not have transportation when they come here. Several of them do have either bicycles, you can see the bicycle there, or they have automobiles. It's a very quiet suburban neighborhood, and the kind of place that is so different from where many of them have been living when they've been living, well, on the streets or being put into some of these large halfway houses where they jam people into 4 to a room or more, and I just don't approve of that. I want them to have as good a life as they possibly can have, and we help them find other houses when they're ready to move on. They all help each other, they mentor each other in the program of recovery from alcohol and drugs and finding the life they were meant to have.
Oh, Mr. Ben's a wonderful man. He bought these houses, and him and Donnie set them up to where they could have people come in and not take it over and make a drug house out of it.
I could have rented each side for about $600 a month. As it was, I knocked it all together and I've made it into 4 bedrooms. We have 5 fellows living here. I pay the utilities, I pay for television, they all have television, and many of them have internet as well. But all of them have, gainful employment.
Oh, they vary. That's about a year and a half of being down in Pinellas County, Florida.
Wow.
Yeah, it was bad. I was on almost a 2-year drunk, and
A 2-year drunk?
Let's see. I went down there February of 2009, and then my last picture right here was December the 10th of 2010, and they like to get me again, but I had a bus ticket to leave town, and they said, well, if you get on that bus.
You've been sober quite a while.
I've been sober a year or so, but I'm just now, my cycles are, I'm realizing, I'm staying sober and realizing what's going on in my mind.
He has imagination, and he is creative in the extreme, and what he's brought to this house is a kind of alchemy of recovery. And he said to the guys, why should I go out and do work in other places when I'd rather do work here, because I want to show what it is to be in recovery.
Well, I painted everything. I painted inside and out, and I've moved a big old 10 yard full of dirt back there from the backyard to the front yard, laid sod. Didn't do the ceiling in here, did the ceiling in here, did all this back here, this whatever that salmon color is, and then the walls in there in the living room and both of them rooms. I painted them and the ceilings, and then redone the trim brown, all that stuff. Yeah.
We want people to put their energy into creativity and into, the art of living. There are several thousand books in here. I was given 4,000 books by the Golden Leaf Bookstore, which I gave to the prisons, and they distributed to 15 prisons. I then gave 400 books to the Garland County Jail through Ed Losey, the chaplain there, so that they would have a library. We've given books to the various women's recovery centers. One of them, I think it was Father's House, wouldn't accept the books because they said they weren't Christian. I said, yeah, but I mean, how do you define Christian? These are books of learning and but they were afraid. So their Christianity was, I wouldn't say very robust if they were afraid to read books. I find that a little strange because I've been a teacher and I trained for the priesthood myself in the Episcopal Church, and then I decided to go into prison work instead and to be a missionary in the streets and with the people.
Ben had some rent houses and some folks moved out, and we decided to allow some of my friends to move in and become a part of the program. And they moved in, and it went well for about a year or so, and then another house came open, and we decided to go ahead and let that house become a chem-free house. And that's actually the house we're in right now. Now we're operating 4 chem-frees where we service 22 people.
It's been a life-saving thing for me. This has turned out to be a second home for me, and I've actually got some of my family back now that's actually coming to see me.
How many days have you been here?
8.
8 days. And it feels pretty good? It's a quiet place. Very quiet. And that's one of the reasons I got this house, because it was kind of away from everything, yet it's in the center. Because you can walk to Many of the meetings. The original reason I started the house was I did a radio program with Melissa Glenn, who's head of the Human Trafficking Task Force. And she told me that there was no safe house for women who were caught up in that terrible criminal behavior of human trafficking. So I established a halfway house there. But mostly we get women who are coming out of treatment centers for drug and alcohol or coming out of jail. And they come to our house and they go to programs, NA and AA, and they get jobs, and they are mentors to each other. Many of them have been through drug courts. Many of them have been in jail or prison. Many of them have been in drug and alcohol counseling recovery centers or in hospitals for mental disorders. And these are people that are helping each other readjust. Many of them have had families, have been married, have held jobs of some importance, and then have had something happen that caused them to begin using drugs or alcohol indiscriminately and engaging in criminal behaviors, everything from shoplifting to, more grievous charges of felony offense.
I struggled with addiction my whole entire life. I'm from a town about 30 miles from here. I came up here to be structured, to have guidance, to be surrounded with family atmosphere so that I can be with people to help me get through my addiction and learn about myself.
My daughter got raped by a 14-year-old boy. She was 3. And I started using methamphetamine to block the pain from it.
I've struggled with addiction for 16 years. I have a son and twin girls, and I used all through both my pregnancies with them. My disease started out just on the weekends, a social deal. And somewhere along the way, it progressed, and I would get clean for a while, and then every time I would go back, it would just get worse. Worse to the point where I lost my children.
I just love it here. I love the sisterly atmosphere that we have, that we can count on each other here. If we need anything, there's others here that know what we're going through, because my thinking hasn't always been right. And it just helps when there's other people around me that are like me, and I can be around my daughter.
She forgot to tell y'all she's been clean for 8 months.
Yeah.
Almost 9, but 8 months. And
it's working for me.
I haven't, on the other hand, and it took me losing my baby.
Our clients need to know this change is attainable. This is not something that is beyond the reach of anyone. They can all make these changes if they will dedicate themselves, if they really want to do it. And there's help there now if they want to seek that out to help people attain these goals and become the people that they want to be and that they can be.
I've been at my job the whole time I've been in this recovery, the same job. I don't call in, I don't miss work. It's like I'm just now, like I was a baby all my whole life. And I'm just now at this age learning how to be responsible, learning how to face problems instead of running from them.
Well, we have a lot of people who are just trying to escape the normal stresses of life by use of alcohol or drugs. And it's more of a mind-numbing escape mechanism than anything else. And those are the people that we really have our highest success rate with, because we are able to give them tools with which they can deal with their problems head on.
I actually went to college and didn't think I was ever going to go to college, and I've helped a few people go and get college. There's one guy that he's actually an EMT now because he signed up through school because he knew I was in school and he asked me how to do it, and I guided him through that process.
Yeah, I don't know nothing about writing papers. It's not my, I don't think I showed up very much at high school, but Ben helped me out with some English literature papers I had to write for English class, and he helped me out with those, and I got A+. A couple of them got 100% on with Ben's help on that.
Most of the guys we get either are coming straight off the street or they're coming from a treatment center.
I've been in every one of their chem-free houses, Donnie Scott and Ben Wright's chem-free houses. I was one of the first couple of guys that were ever in any of their houses. Now, my process with Donnie and Ben Wright, I didn't stay clean right at first, all right? But I ended up making it back to Donnie Scott and Ben Wright because I knew where to go. And finally, on the last time it stuck, when I came and called Donnie, you know, it was my last resort. I was nearly dead. I was going to the methadone clinic every day, and I was having to do, you know, drugs on top of that to maintain not getting sick. Basically, if you ever hear a drug addict talk about being sick, I struggled with being sick. That's the main reason I used. Not only was I an addict, but physically I was sick. I needed the opiates in my body to make it through a day.
We've had a lot of success rate, and I really trust in God and know that it's God that does all the work.
We instruct men that we need to find a higher power, the God of your understanding. It can be Christian, it can be Buddhist, it can be Shinto, it can be Hindu, it can be whatever you want to call it. But we also tell people to do meditation. I give a simple meditation to the men when I'm in the prison. I just say, Om. And it's part of Om Mani Padme, Om Mani Padme, Om Mani Padme. Sometimes when I go down to the prisons and I go to the Ouachita River Correction Unit in Malvern, and I go to the recidivist unit, which is called Omega, sometimes the men will just go Om. And I tell them a little mantra, which is to trick the brain into being positive and grateful. Think good, not bad, think good. Think good, not bad, think good. Think good, not bad. And every day, a mudra, which is a prayer with the hands of gratitude. And in the evening, gratitude. I was down at Omega last night at the recidivist unit. And there's fellows down there, many of them from Hot Springs, and they were saying, oh, I want to be in Happy Destiny Homes. We all heard about it. The recidivist unit, it's when people violate the parole. Like if they don't check in with the parole officer, they're sent back. But they're sent back to a re-education unit called Omega in Malvern. And it's across the road from the big house, the maximum security, which is about 2,000 men locked up. Hard time, long time, most of them. So when I'm in the prison, as I was last night, I talk to the men about addiction to behaviors and addiction to addiction. I said, people ask me, what was your drug of choice? I'll say more. I always wanted more. And it's addiction to the behavior, being, I'm a gangster, I'm a tough guy, nobody messes with me, I'll get back at them. All this stuff is ridiculous. 3% of alcoholics get to AA meetings, and of that 3%, 4% only, 1 out of 17, will achieve any recovery for a lifetime. The odds are pretty stiff. But it's 1 out of every 8 people that drinks that is probably alcoholic, and it's a malfunction of the islets of Langerhans, a part of the pancreas that also controls diabetes and hypoglycemia.
Some are, I think, genetically predisposed to an addiction to a substance. I think we find that more with alcohol probably than with anything else. But we just have people that cannot drink, and they are never going to be able to drink. And they need to come to grips with that. And sometimes it's hard because our society is such that alcohol has been deemed as an acceptable stress reliever for generations now, and it's almost become ingrained. You'll see in movies and TV shows, if someone's under stress, say, I need a drink. Well, we've learned that alcohol is probably one of the worst problem dealing mechanisms that you have. You do not deal with your problems by drinking. All you do is defer those problems, and during which time they get worse rather than better because you're not addressing the situation.
So an alcoholic, when I drink alcohol, we transform it into something like rocket fuel, whereas a normal person transforms it into sugar and all kinds of nice things and just feels sleepy and wants to go home. We want to go out and tear up everything and go shooting off into outer space. And some of us go into what is called alcoholic psychosis, and we do damage, and we are in blackouts. We don't remember it. More than half of the people in prison for violent crimes were there because of alcohol-related behavior, and half of those do not remember it. There are men who have murdered in alcoholic blackout and do not remember it. It's called alcoholic blackout.
You know, as you said, I flew out here from California. Things had gotten pretty bad. I like to drink. I like my drugs. I like women. I like to drink more than anything else. And pretty much, you know, I was addicted to alcohol and drinking on a daily basis, blacking out every day for the most part. And just really looking back at it, it's really pathetic. Although at the time I felt like a rock star.
It's recovery from being enslaved by a mind-altering substance or a mind-altering attitude.
One of Happy Destiny homes on Laser Street, I started attending college just with no idea what I wanted to do exactly. I just knew that I was becoming extremely bored and agitated with the job I had at the time, punching a clock, doing the 9-to-5 thing. It seemed kind of boring compared to, you know, because it's not like I got sober to just lead a boring life. You know, I was used to always having all this chaos and excitement going around me that most of which was negative, but it was still chaos and stuff that excited me.
Donnie took me to a place and they wouldn't take me in. So like a Kim Free, it wasn't a Kim Free, it was a detox center. They wouldn't take me in. So Donnie took me in, detoxed on a couch in a Kim Free. They set somebody with me to watch over him and make sure I didn't fall out and die. You know, that's basically my story with Donnie Scott, and here's what it's turned into for me. I've been clean nearly 3 years. In November 21st, it'll be 3 years, and here's my life today.
If men don't have a job, we help them find jobs. We have many friends who themselves were former convicts, felons, and who will give them jobs and give them a chance when other people wouldn't. We find them jobs, we find them clothing. There's one man here, when I took him before the judge, he didn't have a belt to hold up his pants. I gave him my belt, and that later in the day, I gave him some pants and several belts. And a week later, he was in here, in this house, ironing the pants. And he's held a very good job ever since then. He has his own little cleaning company now, cleaning of houses and schools.
We have noticed a definite correlation between people that find jobs that are rewarding or satisfying, give them a sense of self-worth, allow them to obtain a certain degree of financial independence. All that helps in the recovery process.
I have a good job at the city. I've been there 2 years. They're wonderful. I checked myself into the hospital and stopped doing drugs December of last year.
I had coming into some issues with having a checkered background. First, they didn't want to let me into the program. Then they did. Then they said I wasn't sure if I'd pass background checks to acquire a license. And then they said, you know, well, you're not going to be able to get a job as an EMT. And
there are many men I'm very proud of. You've had Mark Rogers, who's now an emergency medical technician in the business of saving lives. We are in the business of saving lives.
When you come out of prison, you're not ready for the world. And they just throw you out the door with $100 check and say, here you go, happy living. And, you know, and a lot of them don't make it. You know, I've seen a lot of them that's institutionalized, they'll wind up right back in prison. If more people could find out about places like this, if prisons would actually help people get into places like this, it would be a better thing. It would save a lot of lives, and it would actually open up bed spaces where we wouldn't have to have as many prisons because of the revolving door system. A lot of the inmates that you see in prison these days started out 20, 30 years ago, and they've probably been out 4 or 5 different times, but just couldn't make it. And without the help of a home like this and somebody to watch you, I'm not saying we got to be perfect in here. Nobody is perfect. And we're going to make our mistakes, but there's one thing about it. When we make a mistake, there's consequences behind them, but we don't get a punishment for them. You know, it ain't like, well, we messed up, so we're going. You know, you get out with nowhere to go. Ben and Donnie will get together and they'll move them somewhere else and try them someplace else. And so that way, they can be adjusted. That way, it ain't just get out, be gone, we're done with you. And that's what's a good thing about Happy Destiny Home. And I thank Donnie and Mr. Ben for saving my life.
I don't know what I would do without having this place, because if we were both in our own place out there,
we'd probably use.
Our decisions are bad. Our choices are bad. They've always been bad. And just now I'm learning how to make good choices. And I need this house. I need these people. I need Donnie Scott and I need Ben. I need people that are gonna support me and have faith in me and believe in me. And that gets me to making better choices.
First thing everyone can do is get involved in the NAAA process. Everyone can't afford to go into rehab. Everybody can't afford to schedule in with a counselor who can go one-on-one with them. But everyone can attend AA meetings. We have them all over town, all the time. Everybody can do that regardless of their situation because they're out there. It's just a question of wanting to make a change. You have to change your playgrounds, you change your playmates, and you change your play toys. And that is just a truism because you have to make some changes, and oftentimes the change of playmates is the hardest part because generally drug users hang around with drug users. One of the threshold questions that we have to address is where are our clients going to live? Because they have to be able to live in an environment that is drug-free, number one. And most of these people come from homes that are not drug-free. So that's why Dr. Wright's halfway houses are very important in the process because we have to provide a place they can go and live and be safe and be drug-free and not be under constant temptation to use.
We have a book of meditations. It's called the 24-Hour Book. It is the key to one of the meetings I started here called Last House on the Block. And this is, for many people, the last house on the block. And this is where they then go on to purchase their own homes and their own houses. And they get married and they have children.
I didn't have my child when I went into that Kim Free. I was not married. I did not have a house. I was homeless. I was unemployable. Today, I'm I'm top producer in life insurance and Medicare supplements for elder care. I have a house. We bought a house. I have a wife. I have my daughter.
We've had some success stories that I'm still very proud of, people that we as a team felt were hopeless. And they have just exceeded all expectations. And I got to remarry one of our clients to his wife who had divorced him. His kids had totally rejected him. They wanted nothing to do with him. And now they've been reunited. The couple is remarried. It is just awesome when you see what can happen.
It's something that I would do no matter what. It's just because I get to help other folks and get to watch them go through life changes that are incredible. I got to go through an incredible life change myself, and I get to experience other people doing it.
Ben would pick me up and take me to go work for him. I had no job, I had no money, and he found work for me to do. He'd pick me up and take me home every day, and the last thing he'd say to me when he dropped me off, he'd shake my hand. And he'd say, "Thank you for keeping me sober today."
Because he's enabling me to help another. And that gets out of the I, self, me. We say that the disease of alcoholism and drug addiction is really the ism, the I, self, me. And the ism is not a wasm until you reach out and help another. That's what we do with Happy Destiny Homes. That's what we do with Clarion Call. The call of freedom. And then where do I go?
I'm hoping that after some more recovery and after some more bonding and learning to trust and learning, and believing in having friends and stuff, that I can just be an active member somewhere else and, and let other people come here and get what I've gotten from here. Let other people get to experience, because there's other people that haven't grown up either, that are 40 years old, 44, and haven't grown up and haven't had a chance to be around other people to help them grow up. But I still, makes me really want to help other people. Somehow, some way, this makes me want to help them do what I couldn't do, you know, or help, maybe I could save them a lot of, you know, the mistakes that I made.
You know, if I hadn't had some place to go to when I was in that state of mind and state of the situation I was in, you know, how differently my life would be today, you know, how blessed I was to have people set these things up like Ben.
Happy Destiny Home has brought me to where I'm at today. Peace, serenity, hope, happiness through my family. You're looking at 3 generations here. Wow.
What they give me hope. When I had no hope, and now it's my job, and that's all we really have to share with one another is hope. My hope has turned into faith and trust today. And how I do it, you know, I'm a active member in a 12-step program. I do work the steps of this 12-step program, and I work with other people, and that's how I give back. And I'm very grateful for the opportunity that they even let me come back to their Kim-free house. I got kicked out of every one of them, just to be honest with you. Every one of the houses that they ever had, Donnie had to run me off because I couldn't, you know, I would come in, I would get clean for just a little bit of time, and I would start using. And Donnie would get fed up with me and run me off, you know, and that's what he needed to do. I was using, and it was unsafe for other people around me. But he had compassion on me, and he was gracious enough to me to allow me to come back to his Kim-free house, and my life's totally different today.
In the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous on page 132, 16 lines up and 16 lines down is probably the essence of it all. We absolutely insist on enjoying life. And that is what we try to give people, to give them freedom to be happy, joyous, and free.